What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. Mike, to quote your birthday song to Delago, hot enough for you?
What are we, fucking old-ass men just hanging out outside the local watering hole? Hot enough now with that there for you? Yeah, it's fucking hot. And we were, Mateo and I, before we started recording it, were sitting there shooting the poop about how miserable we get in the hot weather. And let me tell you guys, it's pretty fucking miserable. Like, I bitch about living in the fucking Arctic Circle and how much I hate winter. But honestly, as much as I hate winter, super hot fucking muggy weather, just nothing is worse. Nothing.
Yeah, same here. We're talking about how we both don't do well in the heat. It's 9 o'clock where I'm at right now, and I have my air conditioner on, so you guys might hear that. But yeah, it's warm enough to have that on this late at night.
Yeah, mine's been on for the past couple of days as well. But I'm in my basement office, so you won't be hearing my AC. You might hear a cricket chirping though, because there is one of my lizards didn't eat the cricket that's in his enclosure, and it's been chirping, and so you if you hear it, that's, you know, I'm giving you a heads up. So if you hate cricket noises, maybe Mateo can just edit it out. I don't fucking know, but I'm just throwing this caveat in there.
A little blast from the past.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, except instead of having a whole colony of crickets like I used to have, it's just one noisy son of a bitch that refuses to get eaten. Why won't you die?
You've got the Rambo of crickets in there, man.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more sheer laziness and sketchiness on the part of my lizard.
He's afraid to eat it?
He's afraid of fucking everything. So it's a green anole, which is like native to North, South Carolina and Florida, maybe Louisiana as well. I don't know, all through that region. But I've got one here, and usually they're like, I've had them, you know, millions of times growing up and throughout the years, and they're usually pretty entertaining to watch. They don't really like being held, but they tolerate it. You throw food in there, they instantly go for it. This guy, the second I even fucking go near the enclosure, he goes, runs, and hides. If I make a noise, if I sneeze, if I sniffle, he'll run away. It's like I've seen him eat one time, and I've had him for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's just, it's like, I might as well just, like, as far as pets go, he over the winter, he escaped and was MIA for like 3 months. No idea where he was. And then one day I'm fucking around with my rats, and he's just chilling on top of the rat cage. Has been gone for fucking months.
Oh my God.
So he hasn't ate anything. He hasn't drank anything. He's gotten no UVB light. And it's fucking winter, so it's cold as shit in my basement. I've got a heater for my office, but not the rest of the base. So I don't know where the fuck he's been, but he somehow survived for 3 months with nothing. And now that he's back, my tank is exactly the same. It's filled with isopods and a fucking beautiful philodendron and a fucking sketchy green anole that just wants to hide all day. So that's yeah. So I don't know. He's just a fucking, I want someone to take him. I want anyone to take him. If you want to take him, please take him from me. Let me know. Inquire within.
Well, now that we've traditionally proved that once you become an old person, you will talk about the weather and your pets.
And yeah, how's your kids, Mateo?
I'm not telling you. I'm not starting it.
I refuse to go down that road.
You have an interesting case tonight. This is something I haven't heard of, and you were pretty excited about it, so am I.
Yeah, we don't talk about near-death experiences a whole lot on this show, but I came across one that I thought was kind of interesting. It seemed a little bit different from the usual, and there were maybe some ties to some abduction experiences, perhaps, which makes me kind of feel even better about my theory that everything is everything. But yeah, so this guy, his name is Bill Letson, and he is a retired fire captain, and he used to be a forester as well. So he was a fire captain for 35 years. He was actually on an emergency call when this goes back to this happened a while ago, so it's an older case, but it happened in 1994, and he was called in to respond to this patient I say this patient, she wasn't patient yet, this woman who was having breathing difficulty, and so they called in emergency services, and he got there before the ambulance did, so he started CPR on her. And he said around this time, he was the fire captain in Santa Barbara. And he said around this time, in Santa Barbara, there was a particularly vicious strain of the flu that was going on. And it turned out that this patient, this woman that he was giving CPR to, had this strain of the flu. And when he was doing mouth to mouth, he said at one point he got her breathing again. And just as he got her breathing, she exhaled directly into his mouth. So he remembers thinking, well, whatever she's got, chances are I am now going to get that, because you don't get much closer than breathing in someone else's breath. So he he helped her. She went to the hospital. Everything was fine. He went back to his life as normal for a couple of days, but within a few days, he ended up starting to have the similar type of symptoms that were being seen with the flu. He started showing the symptoms, and then the next day he was hospitalized, and he was having trouble breathing. He was in intensive care. And he said when he went in, there were tons of people in the waiting room, and most of the people that were there were having the same symptoms. So I guess it would be similar to like a year or two ago when people were flooding the hospital with COVID symptoms. But in this case, it was the flu. And so he went in, and he ended up having to stay overnight, and he became extremely dehydrated, and his vital signs were getting weak. And they ended up giving him this medicine. He said they gave him 2 different types of medicine. One of them was for pain relief, and the other one was for nausea relief. And he ended up having adverse effects to these. He didn't mention if he knew which one of the medications it was, but he ended up having adverse effects, and he was Narcaned 3 times. So for anyone that doesn't know what Narcan is, it's what they do to someone who's having a opiate overdose typically, and it's supposed to help your system fight off the effects of the opiate, I guess, and bring you back so that you're not going to overdose. And they Narcaned him 3 times, and after the 3rd time, they were able to stabilize him, but he was still in rough shape, so he was put in the intensive care unit. So it was at this point he's now like all, he's been given pain medication, then he's been given this other stuff to bring him back from what they thought was an overdose, I guess. But he said he felt like he had left his body, and all that he could see was this, what he described as a star-filled realm. And within this star-filled realm, he said there were no feelings of negativity, and he had this ecstatic feeling that he called a cosmic orgasm. And he said it persisted the entire time he was in this star-filled realm. And he said there was no negativity, but like he could remember like negative emotions from when he was in his body. Like he said, like anger and jealousy. He had a memory of these things, but he said that this space, it was tangibly free of any negative emotion or feelings. And it was just this overwhelming sense of ecstasy, I guess. He said that he felt while he was here that this is the energy where all life comes from, and that it's in everybody. And he said we get a little taste of it when we have a personal victory. Like he equated it to like someone who scores a touchdown in a football game, or like someone who wins the Nobel Prize, you know, something that's like a really big deal and a big personal victory for a person. And he's like, that's the energy, the essence where we come from. But he said, while he was here, he had a sense of himself, and he had a sense of his self in the current state, but he also had a memory of himself in his human state and was able to differentiate between the two states. But he felt like his being, like his essence, went on forever, almost like he was infinite. And this feeling lasted for the entire time that he was in this star-filled realm. But before I go on from there, I just want to touch on this star-filled realm and ecstasy feeling thing, and the feeling of infinity. And I do wonder if this is possibly a DMT experience that his brain was crafting for him. And I know a lot of cases with near-death experiences that the skeptics kind of equate it to a DMT dump in the brain. And as a result, your brain is kind of trying to make sense of what's going on, and it creates this whole image of an afterlife. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because with a lot of DMT experience, there is this kind of it's almost like a cosmic geometry that gets experienced. So I wonder if like the star-filled realm was like his version of like the cosmic geometry, and it was his way of seeing it, and this feeling of ecstasy that he got was because of the DMT in his brain.
Right.
And the feeling of infinity, you know, kind of was a result of the DMT in his brain. And I don't want to, and I mean, this is just for this part of it, and it could tie into the later parts with the DMT thing, because anyone who's aware of Joe Rogan has heard the term the spirit molecule in reference to DMT. But it is accurate. The DMT has always been, well, I shouldn't say always because it does get abused, but traditionally it's been used to achieve some sort of spiritual awakening, or to kind of be used as like a spiritual guide or spiritual healer. So, and people that are on, like, especially with people who have used ayahuasca and have an ayahuasca experience, ayahuasca is essentially DMT that you're able to take orally and consume rather than smoke it. And a lot of people that go through an ayahuasca ceremony will experience like spirit guides, or even in some instances deities that'll talk to them and kind of communicate with them or bestow knowledge on them. So even if this was an experience that was started as a result of DMT, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a false experience. Like the DMT could have helped facilitate the experience versus the DMT being the experience, if you catch my meaning there.
Right.
But there's like, I don't think I've ever told this story on here, but I've had a personal experience with, I dabble in psychedelics from time to time, and I had an experience on a particularly healthy dose of mushrooms where I was present, but I was also like on a different, to me, based on my perception at the time, I felt like I was on a different level of existence. And my partner was talking to me about, I can't even tell you what the fuck she was talking to me about, just going on about just mundane everyday stuff. And I remember thinking, like, in my head, I can hear her talking. I understand what she's talking about, but why does she think that I would even be on a level where I would care about any of this everyday stuff? And it wasn't like, oh, I don't care what she's saying. Like, it wasn't like that. It was like anybody could have told me anything about something going on in the world, and I would have been like, I'm literally above that right now. Like, I'm in a different dimension. How dare you bring me back to this fucking material plane? Like, I'm in my head, I was in this, and to some people it sounds so fucking creepy, but to me it was like the coolest thing ever. I was in this world I was in I don't even know what the fuck to call it. I was in this place that was made up of geometric patterns made out of fragments of spider bodies.
What
and
the
it was
fuck?
like just repeating into infinity. Just these different fragments of spider bodies connected together in geometric patterns. And like I could see where people would think it was creepy, but to me it was more like I almost felt like I was at the time like there was some deity that was trying to make itself known to me, but it was in the form of these spider geometry things. I don't know. It's so hard to describe, and it doesn't really make sense. And it's not like, so like I said, I dabble in psychedelics from time to time. So it's not, it wasn't an issue of me not being able to handle my shit and like losing it. Like I've taken more and had lesser experiences. I've tried other psychedelics, and this was literally the I've never had a psychedelic experience like this in my life. Like usually it's I'll have altered perception, I'll get the giggles, I'll feel like slightly elevated consciousness, but this, I was like fully immersed in this other place, even though I was existing in this world. And it just felt weird to have a foot in both worlds at the same time, and be able to like acknowledge the material world that I live and dwell in, but also be part of like this higher realm that doesn't exist. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't, that we don't have access to. And I don't think that the spider geometry world is like I went to this world. Like, I think that was just like the way that it was presenting itself to me. I think it presents itself to different people in a different way. And so I think in this case, Bill was experiencing it as this star-filled realm filled with ecstasy. And that's the way that he was perceiving this. But this was just a like a highway to get where he was going, like just the in between this world and where he was going on his journey. But while he was there, he was wondering about his human life, and he started thinking about how as a human, like all the things that we think about, like in our daily life, like whether good or bad, there's stuff that ties us to our physical world that we're aware, like things like fucking clothing and emotions and money and stuff like that. And he said, well, he was here in this star-filled realm. He began to wonder how he ever actually was that person. And it was almost like a repulsive idea that he would even go back to living as a human, because where he was, like outside of the human body, just living or existing as a open consciousness in the universe, human life just didn't make sense. Like the way that we live our life, it doesn't. And really, we all know it doesn't fucking make sense. It's so dumb the way that our existence is as modern humans. It's so fucking stupid. But where he was, it was like beyond stupid. It was almost unfathomable. And he said the way that he compared it was him being in this place was like a banana being out of the peel. And once you peel a banana, you can't put the banana back in the peel. What are you going to do with that peel now? It's just it's useless at this point. You've already opened the banana. And he said that's kind of how he felt. Like his human body was just useless at this point. He didn't need it. He didn't want it even. But eventually his consciousness landed, as he puts it, and he appeared in this place that he said there was like indirect lighting and everything was white, and he saw gurneys and what looked like hospital equipment all around, but it was like this empty room for the most part. But he was greeted by three beings. He said that they had large heads and faces with big, broad mouths that were smiling, but they were wearing dark hoods and they had squat little bodies. And he said later he saw the movie Communion, that's based on the Whitley Strieber story. And he said these beings that he saw looked very similar to the way that the visitors were portrayed in that movie. And a lot of people, when they hear Whitley Strieber and Communion, they immediately think of the gray alien because of the cover of the book, and that image is so iconic. But what Whitley Strieber actually describes aren't gray aliens, which is kind of weird that they're tied together like that, but it's really just the cover art. And what he described was more in line with what's being described here, which is kind of interesting. It makes me think like that a lot of people, we've even talked about on the show how abduction experiences in a lot of cases kind of sound similar to out-of-body experiences or spiritual experiences. And Bill even said it. He's had people reach out to him claiming that they've been abducted or in contact with beings that are similar to the way that he's describing them. But again, this wasn't an abduction experience. He was out of body. He was having a near-death experience. So it's kind of interesting, really, when you think about that, how this experience, his body was dying and he was having this experience with these beings, but there's other people that just go to sleep and they have this experience. So it does make me wonder, like as far as these like really weird abduction cases go, how much of it is actually physical and how much of it is taking place on like a psychic level or an astral level, like an out of body. It's some sort of out of body experience. So it's not actually happening to your body. Like I go back to going way back when we had Michelle on talking about her abduction experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time we weren't really sure what to make of it. But looking back on it now, if that was an actual event that happened, it really sounds like it's more the way that she described it. It sounds like it's more like it was more of an out of body thing than a physical thing. It just kind of took on the appearance. Well, I don't even want to say appearance. Like it just kind of gave the impression that it was happening physically, but really it's happening on a different level. Like I do think it's more of experience with your consciousness or your I hesitate to say soul, but I mean essentially that's what it is. Your non-physical being. I think that's where this thing kind of happens. And then obviously you've got the cases like with implants and shit like that. Like you're not going to be able to implant on a non-physical level. It's, but I think we have two different, when people describe alien abduction experiences, I think there's two different experiences that are being discussed. And I think one is like a spiritual level or a non-physical level where you're having some sort of likely DMT induced experience, or maybe not induced, but initiated, where through the use of DMT in your brain, you're able to interact with other non-physical beings. And then I think there's also the other side of things where it's physical, but I think that those are likely, I think humans are likely the villains in that scenario, and it's just all a fucking game to like cover up. We've talked about the military abductions several times. That's not what this episode is about. So, but that, that's just kind of the other side of the coin of the abduction thing.
Right. I also got to say, for this dude to have an encounter with an entity that matched up with Whitley Strieber's stuff, that's strange to me because that's such a specific description he had of these beings. I think he did talk about the gray aliens and them being some type of construct, and like actually ripping at one of their faces and removing some type of panel, if I'm not mistaken. That could be from the fucking movie. I don't know. I'm old, but to those. I remember those little stubby, cloaked dudes. That's such a weird coincidence, I guess.
When he finally gets greeted by these people, he said that they greeted him like he was familiar to them, and they crowded around him and they were like excitedly asking him what he learned, and they wanted to know how it was, and it being presumably human life or life as immortal. But they asked him if he remembered them, and they found it funny when he admitted that he didn't really remember them, but he had kind of like this vague recollection about them. And he said they were just really cheerful and friendly, and they were like almost giggling as they were talking to him.
Weird.
Yeah. But then this fourth being appears and comes forward, and this guy looked different. He said he was tall and wispy, and he had this big happy smile and what he described as a wonderful laugh. And he said when they were talking, like almost every response that he would give, he would kind of have like this warm chuckle in his voice. And when he first presented himself to Bill, he felt this overwhelming, almost paralyzing sense of uncontrollable love.
Huh.
And he said it was just so overwhelming, like it almost made him want to cry, but like in the best way, not like he was sad or afraid. It was just overwhelming love. And he said it just kind of, it was more than he had ever experienced. But he also got the feeling that it was almost like a father-son sort of relationship between him and this being. Like almost like the way, listening to him talk about it, I got the impression that it was like a creator sort of thing. Like in religion, God is always called God the Father, but he's also acknowledged as being the creator. So I get that he's like, this being is kind of taking on like that type of archetype, I guess, as the father creator figure.
Okay.
But he said that him and this guy were they were going back and forth, and he just kind of got the feeling like this guy was, or this being was really happy to see him and really happy to interact with him, but it was a feeling similar to like a father hearing his 3-year-old come home from preschool, and like like you're happy to hear that they're having a good time, but you're like, like really you ate some cookies and played duck goose, all right, cool, that sort of thing. But as time had passed, Bill had kind of come to the conclusion that he had died, because he had full memories of his life as a human. And to him, it wasn't like he was still a human that was like out of his body. Like he felt like he was a completely different being now, that just had a memory of being a human. And so he figured that at this point he was going to be moving on, or going to whatever, doing whatever happens after the physical body dies. So he asks this being if he's like, is this a time for me to review my life? And he said that the being smiled at him and laughed, and he's like, sure, we can do that. So Bill and this being proceeded to start having a review of his life, and Bill was talking about different decisions he made in his life and things that he wished he did differently, and started reviewing regrets. And it got to the point where he had just been going on, and as he's talking, he realizes that nobody that's in the room gives a shit about what he's talking about at all. They're just kind of being patient and friendly with him while he goes on this whole thing. So as he comes to this realization, the leader kindly tells him, it's all right, that's enough. It's time for you to go back. Once he hears this news, he becomes as distraught as you can be as a non-physical entity, I suppose. But he said that he began to feel upset about this, because he, for one, can't even comprehend going back to that life after living, or after, being a non-physical being experiencing all this. But this being told him that he has to go back because there's still things that he has to do. And once he told him that, he said the other 3 beings that he saw just disappeared, and he got the impression that they had been reassigned, and so they were just gone at that point. And so he was left there with this one being, who was kind of telling him, your life's not over, you still got to go back, and there's things to do as a human. And he sent him back. And as he said, it was like he got the feeling that the frequencies in his body, or the vibrations in his body, were dropping, and they were changing from where they had been, and he got this sensation that he was physically dropping, and then he became surrounded by darkness. And he said, while he was in this darkness, everything was lonely and dismal, and it was just this miserable place that he did not want to be in. But after going through the darkness, he ended up waking up in the hospital bed. And when he woke up, the nurse was there, and she told him that they thought they were going to lose him. He had almost died. And he asked her why he was back. And he recalled feeling angry about the fact that he was forced to come back, and didn't feel like he should be there. But he felt like where he was his home, and that he was there with his best friends, and that's where he wanted to be, was home with his friends, but instead he was forced to come back to Earth and resume his life as a human.
I've heard that more than once. And when I was young and I heard that, I always found it so interesting. It kind of, to me, made me think that they must have experienced something pretty amazing to actually be pissed off that they had to come back to being alive.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, it's really hard to say, like, to really get into it, especially with, if someone is like, doesn't believe in an afterlife or the spirit or anything like that. But to me, it's like, imagine being a caterpillar, and then you get in your cocoon and you're not moving anymore, and you're just stuck in this cocoon. And then all of a sudden you emerge as a butterfly, and you get to experience what life as a butterfly is like. But then someone grabs you and is like, no, you're going back in the cocoon. And then when you get out of the cocoon, you're going back to life as a caterpillar, where you just have to fucking crawl everywhere and eat leaves and be hideous and gross. And you're like, but no, I'm a beautiful butterfly and I can fly everywhere I want. No, I'm sorry. You're going back to being a caterpillar again. And that's what you're going to do. You know, I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Like, you are given complete freedom to just fly and be beautiful and sexy and dance around on flowers and shit. And then someone's like, no, you're going back and you're just going to be a fucking grub. Sorry.
That does suck. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he had one of these positive experiences where he gets this feeling of love. Also, traditionally, a little taste of I don't know if you want to say the other place, where he's sent to this place where
the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he was talking about the dark place a bit, and the way that he's describing it, it sounds like it's kind of like purgatory from like a Christian perspective, for anyone who might be aware of what purgatory is. Hold on one second, these guys are being fucking loud. Sorry. But he describes it as being like kind of like a holding place for when you die. Typically when people die, the average person, they're kind of holding on to things from their human life, you know, whether it be like human relationships, whether it be regrets they have, thoughts about physical items, possessions, things like that. But it's all things that are considered to be like lower vibrational. So when we die with that sort of vibration, or that sort of, I guess, mentality, we have to figure out how to change our spiritual awareness or orientation, I guess, and kind of transition from the physical reality, the human world that we've grown up in, and learn how to exist as basically an infinite non-physical being. So when you first die and you're tied to this former self, because you are non-physical, you're no longer in the world that we know, but you can't ascend because you're still tied to all this lower frequency stuff. And you, as you kind of accept where you are, and that this past life is bullshit, and it's really, you know, that's not our purpose. The physical world is there to help us learn, but it's not our whole purpose. So as we start to discover that, that's when we start to draw ourselves up out of the darkness, or the you know, hell or purgatory, however you want to look at it. He did actually talk about other experiences where people have had near-death experiences and have gone to what they perceived as hell, but were able to use certain methods to kind of build themselves up to escape. So, from his perspective, hell isn't eternal torment. It's torment while you're there, but you're able to kind of figure it out and build yourself out of hell.
Right, kind of like achieve your way through realization out of there.
Yep. And however you do it, it's kind of like a personal journey, but based on his perspective, that's what he believes. With this, after this experience, he started having these kind of, like I said earlier, with these beings, he had a vague recollection of who they were, but couldn't quite place it. In the years since this experience, he's started having these memories recovered from when he was younger, where he had interactions with these beings. I don't know if it was like an abduction experience or if it was more of like a non-physical experience or dream experience. I don't know. But he said he's been having these memories of interacting with them when he was a child.
That's bizarre. What do you make of that?
Well, to me, it's like I was saying earlier with the abduction experiences, how I think some of them might be non-physical interactions. And because we don't really have, or I should say, since most modern people don't really have any sort of comparable experience, it takes on the feeling of being like an abduction. Like these have to be aliens, because what else could they be? I'm still me. They're fucking aliens. There's no other explanation for it. But for anyone who has never heard of aliens, who might follow like some sort of spiritual path, non-traditional spiritual, maybe even some traditional, there might be people that have these experiences that feel like they've been contacted by angels and had an angelic experience, but it was, just these beings. And I think that's a lot of this stuff is kind of shaped by personal perception. I think some people perceive this sort of experience in a different way, and based on the way that they feel about this sort of experience, I think it's going to kind of shape the way that they perceive it. So you might have some that see these beings as angels. I mean, you could have multiple people seeing the exact same thing. They could all describe it the same way, but they could all have different perceptions of it. Because, I mean, you listen to the way that these things are described. They've got these big heads and faces, these huge wide mouths that are smiling. They're wearing dark hoods. Like, that could be perceived as being creepy and maybe even threatening. But other people see the same thing, and you're like, oh, these guys are my fucking best friends ever. I love these guys.
Yeah, I just see them as some type of guide.
Yeah, or not even guide. Like this guy perceived these three as he said he felt like they were best friends or brothers.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. And but then you could go the other way too. Like, you have the people that talk about having experiences that are completely horrific, yet the entire time they feel calm and serene. But when they're reliving the memory, it's fucking terrifying for them. But the entities do something to them to kind of put them at ease. So I mean, I don't know what to make of it, but it really, like, hearing this and the fact that he experienced this while near death, but other people have experienced interactions with similar entities and they perceive them as being abduction experiences, but the entities kind of present themselves in the same way and they don't seem to be threatening. I don't know. It just, to me, it really seems like it's just more evidence that all this stuff is related in some way, and that it's not what we kind of make it out to be, or like how we like to put it in little categories and compartments. Like, it's not that simple. It doesn't feel right calling it paranormal anymore or supernatural anymore, because it seems like it's a natural part of existence. It's just something that we don't quite understand. And that's where the mystery is. Like, are we supposed to understand it and we've forgotten? Or is it like a situation where we're not supposed to know? It's not for us to know. That's like I said earlier, he said that we're here to learn. Our physical bodies, us going through this miserable existence is for us to learn. And once we learn, we move on from the physical and go back to the non-physical or the spiritual, or again, however you want to, whatever term you want to use. We're really all talking about the same thing.
I don't know. I don't understand that whole we're here to learn thing. Like, as the person I am today, at the age that I am today, I'll even give you that. I don't think I have some type of useful fucking knowledge.
I don't even think it's I don't think it's really knowledge. I think it's a way for us to humble ourselves. Like, if we are eternal beings that exist in the cosmos, basically we all share the same energy of the creator. We're all emanations from that same source. If that's the case, then if there's separate energies or intelligences within that energy, then it would make sense that from time to time we would have to ground ourselves or humble ourselves to make the existence that we're living make a little more sense. So we bring ourselves here, put ourselves in these shells, and put ourselves through suffering in order to get salvation. So I don't think it's really like you have to come here to learn algebra. That's your goal. Like, oh man, I hate math. You're gonna fucking deal with it, bucko. Like, this isn't non-physical spirit school. Maybe it is, and it's just the classes are shitty. Here, you don't like algebra? How about personal finance for a lifetime? Oh, you think you got the hang of it? Well, guess what? Now you have children. No. It's like the worst game of life of all time. 'Cause this time it's real, man. This time it's real.
That's weird. I've always felt that there's been some type of cloaking that happens to our minds when we get older. Either a veil falls or is lifted. I think I just remember my mind being so different when I was younger, and I think that if we're able to like literally just look into somebody's mind, to play what's in their mind on TV and show what creation of life is, I think that they're, I guess on the spiritual realm, because we know what happens physically, I think you'd see people bustling around and planning that. This is maybe not people, obviously, but I don't know. I've always felt like something in our design makes us forget our creation. And it's weird when you hear these stories. It's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how I pictured it. But at the same time, I always chuckle when these people talk about going to hell and it's this fiery place where horned beings are hitting people with chains and all this shit. And it's just like straight out of a movie, you know?
Yeah, I could totally, I don't know, the way, I can't shake that our own personal experience and perception really makes all the difference in the way that these experiences play out. And I know like so you grew up in a seemingly haunted house. So, and you've had, like, you said your dad was involved with the paranormal as well, right?
Yes, sir.
So your experiences are kind of shaped through that filter. So like when you have weird shit that happens, like what we talked about recently on Patreon with the weird shit going on at your house, that's kind of it's kind of put through the filter of like ghosts or a haunting, whereas other people that don't have that sort of that don't have that background or that knowledge might look at that as something completely different. Like with the stuff that you're experiencing now, that could very easily be like a fairy, something like that. And it's all based on perception and experience. And maybe it plays out like a fucking TV show or a movie to like somebody outside. Who the fuck knows? Who knows? Like maybe that's just our fucking life is just entertainment for non-physical beings. It's like, oh, I'm going to tune into the Mike show today. Fuck yeah. What's Mike doing? Oh, he's driving a car? That's awesome. I love drive car scenes.
It's like our whole existence is created to go experience life so that when we die, we return and these beings can just watch what our life was. They can like rent out our life as a movie to watch.
Yeah. Share it with your friends. Look what this asshole's doing today. He's taking out the fucking garbage.
Right.
Piece of shit.
Piece of shit. Have you guys seen the one about the fat podcaster? He's a disgusting animal.
Yeah, wash your fucking hair, dirtball. But I don't want. Yeah, all those people, fucking look at them with their hair and their shoes, because that's what we do. We have hair and shoes.
They're just fascinated.
Yeah, it's like the worst reality TV ever, but to them it's. I mean, I guess it would be more like us, like watching animals at the zoo, or I guess not at the zoo, like watching animals in their natural environment. Like, oh, look at that guy. He's flinging his shit. Stupid monkey picking seeds out of his poop and then eating it. Oh, that's us. We're the stupid monkey picking seeds out of our own shit and eating it.
Right.
What an existence. What an existence.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.